States, a big controversy started on autism because of the vaccines. In the 80s, they had about 8 vaccines till you were about 18 months old. And then right now, it's about 22. So if you look at the 80s, where the ratio of autistic kids was about 30,000 to 1, right now it's about 120, or in
That's
the
scary.
case of males, it's 85 to 1
Actually, the
scary.
latest numbers, 1 in 57 boys in the U.S.
is
now.
autistic.
And doctor, are there studies that are linking autism or the increased numbers of autism to all these vaccines we're receiving? Or
Well,
our
it
kids are
depends.
receiving?
Well, it depends if you ask the federal government and the pharmaceutical industry. Of course, they deny these studies, but the facts are real. That what we're dealing with is a huge amount of vaccinations, and we are told that the mercury, the thimerosal preservative, is out of the vaccines, and that is not true. It is still there in many of the vaccines, anything that is prepared in a multi-dose vial. Now, why would you want to prepare vaccines in a multi-dose vial? Well, there's 10 vaccines in that bottle,
Yeah, yeah.
and so more profit, my friend. Single-dose injections do not have any preservative. It's not required.
Okay.
And, of course, the most powerful preservative of all is mercury. It kills everything.
Yes, yes.
And you're going to inject this into our children.
And
And
that's
the flu vaccine as well
Yeah,
is
because
loaded
our
with
video
mercury.
was our video was about H1N1.
Yeah, H1N1. What a total scam that was. Where's the pandemic, my friend? They couldn't give that vaccine away because everyone found out what was
Yes.
in the H1N1. It was formaldehyde, it was mercury, it was aluminum and squalene.
So there
No.
was nothing. There was nothing that could have really suppressed or stopped the virus in the first place.
No, in fact, all of those agents will hurt the person and their immune system. So God forbid you actually have exposure to a virus or H1N1. You would get sick with you would get sicker than if you didn't have the vaccine.
In fact, there were a lot of side effects being named from the vaccinations. And fortunately, countries in Europe started to get,
Yeah.
to learn about it. So they refused. Countries like Poland refused the vaccination.
Yeah, yeah.
Sweden, all of these countries started refusing. Denmark. So there was nowhere for the vaccines to go. And vaccines are not. You make a vaccine now, you have to consume it within 3 months because you have to keep making a new batch.
Yes, yes.
Every year they study what the strains of viruses are, and then they make a cocktail out of it. So there is no we can't use what was there last year. We can't use the Tamiflu because the next virus is going to be something else.
Yeah.
But guess what they're doing with H1N1? Since no one around the world hardly fell for the scam, no one bought it, very few vaccines are actually given out, they are now incorporating it into the seasonal flu vaccine.
You know what? Okay, before we go to flu vaccines, this whole H1N1 vaccine is something that I can personally relate to. Because last year when this broke out, I actually traveled to Germany at the height, and on an official German government trip. And I actually was looking for an H1N1 vaccine because just to have that peace of mind that I have some protection. Now you're telling me that it was actually toxic, that there was nothing in that vaccine that would have protected me from being infected.
That is correct.
So, okay, so this is clearly a scam. If what you're saying is true, this is a scam. How come? Who are the perpetrators? How come no one's in jail? How come we don't hear about this in the papers?
Well, what you have to really look at is cost, versus risk versus benefit. And this is what we're talking about. It's profit. It's profit. And what happened in the United States, a state of emergency was declared so that if the feds had really wanted to, they could have gone in and forcibly vaccinated. That did not happen because there was no pandemic.
Yes.
And what we're stuck with now, we're still stuck in a state of emergency. We're still stuck with H1N1 on the shelves that is now being incorporated into the
seasonal flu shot.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is ridiculous. And again, it's the mercury, folks. It's the mercury. And this is back to autism and all the other side effects.
And you know that mercury content is 500 times what the body should be taking. Can you imagine that going into a child?
Well, and something I talk about here, because I don't think it has happened here yet in the Philippines. In the United States, mercury thermometers were banned years ago. Now, I understand you can still get a mercury
Yes.
thermometer.
Yeah, I actually
Every
have
corner
one.
has.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
house.
Well, they're banned in the United States. If you break a mercury thermometer, it is known that the mercury is so hazardous, you have to call in a hazmat team to clean it up.
For one
little thermometer. Yeah. And I
Yes,
don't know,
oh
do you
my
remember
gosh.
mercurochrome or
Yes.
merthiolate?
Yeah,
Mercury,
merthiolate, sure.
MER.
Yeah.
It's banned. You can't buy that. Not in the States, anyway.
You can buy it here.
Yeah, probably. But which I want people to know. You should not be able to buy it here. You should not be able to get mercury thermometers.
Well, we have sort of a delayed reaction in this country. When Vioxx was banned in the States, it was still in our shelves. In fact, a lot of medicines that are banned in the States right now are still coming out on television here. So it's
and endorsed
by
by big
Yeah.
name stars, by
Yeah.
big name celebrities.
Yes.
Well, and you have to understand that it's all about profit and someone is being paid off is how I feel about it, because what is true for the U.S. is true for the Filipino people, and that's why I'm here. I want people to know the truth, that you have choices and you need to become educated and personally responsible. You're the parents and you have children and you're the grandmothers and the grandfathers. Why would we want to inflict these injuries onto our children?
But Hans, is it required for school? Because as a parent, can you tell the school, no, I don't want my child to get the polio, the cholera shot, whatever shot, the flu shot? Can you tell them? Because
in
sometimes
certain
it's required.
schools, I think I heard from. Well, I have a friend whose son was refused entry to one of the colleges. I mean, renewal of for the next semester unless they had shots. And his father went berserk. Fortunately, his father was a journalist.
A journalist, okay.
And comes out on TV. So they didn't want to shake the tree. So what they did was they allowed him not to. But there are some schools that do that.
Yes.
You see, what we had in the 80s and the 90s with the tobacco companies, the monopolies, the big money, it's already moved to the pharmaceutical
industry.
That's where the money is being made.
And I think this is an important topic for parents to know what their legal rights are. Now, see, in the United States, vaccines are not mandatory. Every vaccine slip that you fill out, you can check off a religious exemption, a personal exemption, and that's the end of it.
Yes,
There's no more argument. And do not forget that even with vaccine programs, all that we ever hope to attain is 80% vaccination rate prevents any epidemic, 80%. So you know what I tell parents? Make sure your child is in the 20% that's not vaccinated. But yeah, I mean, there is no reason you cannot justify vaccines today. We have better answers, safer answers.
So what you're saying is that we shouldn't, you're saying that we can do without vaccinations.
In my opinion, yes. We have better answers.
Okay, maybe you can talk about what these answers are in our second segment. But before we end the first segment, let's talk about flu vaccines. Because, this is, H1N1, that's yesterday's news.
Right.
But flu vaccine, like every year, I know companies here, they inoculate their employees with the flu vaccine. I just have some friends, they just came from their yearly medical and they had the flu shot. Now, how come this is still being allowed? I mean, if it has all these things that are harmful to us.
Well, I guess I will give people the benefit of that they're ignorant. I don't think that everyone has malice aforethought, but this is my point. Get educated to better options. And they've done the studies. And older folks who had 5 flu vaccines in a row, much higher increase of Alzheimer's. I mean, it just doesn't affect the children and autism. Mercury particularly wipes out the neurological system, wipes out the immune system, and wipes out the hormone system. Mercury is the most poisonous of all, and yet it's in the vaccines, especially the flu vaccine, and flu vaccine is recommended down to 6 months of age.
Yes, yes.
So this is critical information for people to know, and we need to look at what the protocols are here,
Yes.
because I think the Filipino children and adults and the elders deserve the same benefit of the knowledge and choices that the rest of the world does.
Now, all this has really scared me now about vaccines. I'm never going to get another shot in my life.
Good.
So
I'm with you. Me either. Yeah.
Okay, but hey, doctor, we're going to enhance. We're going to talk about more vaccines and what we can do, as you said, doctor, alternatives to getting vaccines when the show comes back after a few moments.
It was formaldehyde. It was mercury. It was aluminum and squalene.
So there was nothing that could have really suppressed or stopped the virus in the first place.
No, in fact, all of those agents will hurt the person and their immune system. So God forbid you actually have exposure to a virus or H1N1, you would get sick with you would get sicker than if you didn't have the vaccine.
In fact, there were a lot of side effects.
That the mercury, the thimerosal preservative, is out of the vaccines, and that is not true. It is still there in many of the vaccines, anything that is prepared in a multi-dose vial. Now, why would you want to prepare vaccines in a multi-dose vial? Well, there's 10 vaccines in that bottle.
Yeah.
And so more profit, my friend. Single-dose injections do not have any preservative. It's not 57 boys in the U.S.
It's
now.
autistic.
And doctor, are there studies that are linking autism or the increased numbers of autism to all these vaccines we're receiving? Or
Well, it
kids are
depends.
receiving?
Well, it depends if you ask the federal government and the pharmaceutical industry. Of course, they deny these studies, but the facts are real. That what we're dealing with is a huge amount of vaccinations, and we are told that
States, a big controversy started on autism because of the vaccines. In the 80s, they had about 8 vaccines till you were about 18 months old. And then right now, it's about 22. So if you look at the 80s, where the ratio of autistic kids was about 30,000 to 1, right now it's about 120, or in
That's
the
scary.
case of males, it's 85 to 1.
actually the
scary.
latest numbers, 1 in 50 required.
Okay.
And of course, the most powerful preservative of all is mercury. It kills everything.
Yes.
And you're going to inject this into our children.
And
And
that's
the flu vaccine as well
Yeah,
is
because
loaded
our
with
video
mercury.
was our video was about H1N1.
Yeah, H1N1. What a total scam that was. Where's the pandemic, my friend? They couldn't give that vaccine away because everyone found out what was
Yes.
in the H1N1.